A lot of people joke that it's become more like the G19. Instead of the G7, it was the G6. Obviously, they're talking about the U.S., but the point is, you push for this sort of multilateralism, this global world. Doesn't it become a lot more difficult with Donald Trump in the White House?
It is a little bit more difficult and complicated as well. But on the other hand, I think there isn't a difference between announcements, even in short messages and Twitter and so on, and the substance of American policy. You have seen 2 days ago he has delivered a speech when he said United States will stick to the obligation of Article 5 NATO treaty. And therefore we think we have to look at the substance of politics, and we try to be very polite, and we know that we need a close cooperation with the United States as much as possible, but it's not only to us to decide.
On the other hand, Chancellor Merkel a couple of weeks ago said in a speech in Bavaria that it's time really for Europe to go it on its own. They can no longer count on partners like the U.S.
If you look what she exactly said, she has said, we have to understand that a little bit more than in the past, we have to realize that we have become adult, we have to take our own responsibilities, we have to make bigger contributions, but this discussion is not new. I remember even President Kennedy, long ago, asked the Europeans for a fairer burden sharing in NATO. And I remember very well after German reunification, all over Europe have been the voices. Now Germany, since Germany has been reunited, since Germany is becoming again full sovereign, until 1990 we have not enjoyed full sovereignty. Now Germans have to take more responsibility, and that is what. Once again, we are totally convinced that the better the cooperation and relation with the United States, the better for Europe, for the world as well. We think also the better for the United States as well. But nevertheless, we will have to take more responsibilities. That is the reason why we have initiated, for example, these initiatives, Compact with Africa. It was the initiative of German government to say we want to take Africa on the agenda of the G20, because we are always discussing for global economy what is the major risk. All major risks are geopolitical, and by far the biggest opportunities and risks are Africa. And therefore, we have said, okay, we will, and of course, we will engage ourselves much more.
You can engage yourself, I guess, a little bit less in the U.S., though, because we hear comments at the NATO summit from President Trump about how bad German trade is. How does this affect your relationship when you're in Bari or in Baden-Baden with the Treasury Secretary? Do you think Steve Mnuchin has the same understanding of global trade as Donald Trump?
I don't know, and if I would know, I wouldn't say it publicly, because I think it would not be very, nor polite, neither wise to discuss whether there are different opinions between President and Secretary of the Treasury. That is up to them. But nevertheless, the cooperation on the level of finance ministers between Stephen and myself is very trustful. We have a lot of contacts, and we have good relations, and of course, we have different obligations. Our mandate is different. Everyone has to care on its own mandate or by his electors. We are all Democrats. The sovereign is decisive. He mandates the Secretary of the Treasury by electing a president. And in Germany, the voters elect the government, the parliament, the government, and so forth. And in this regard, we agree that the more cooperation we can achieve, the better.
You spoke earlier about your conversation with the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Hammond. You work closely with them for now. Do you think that you'll be able to continue working closely with the British after this election? Does it make chances even better that the German and European relationships with the British will stay strong?
I hope so, but I don't know. But it's up to the British government to take their decisions. And of course, after such a surprising defeat, you have to let them some days to think what they will do. But
what do you think the British people were telling the government, though? What do you think the message was that the voters wanted?
What I have said publicly just some minutes before was that my British colleague Philip Hammond told me that they are thinking about what does it mean that a lot of young voters voted for Labour, not for Conservative Party, but they have the idea that the reason why they voted was more distance to Brexit and not for enthusiasm for Labour Party. I don't know, but that's what they are thinking. And then my reaction has been, look, there are some parallels. If you look at the French election, first round to the presidential election, second round to the president, the young generation, which the pro-European part of the younger generation, it's not the whole younger generation, very much in favor of this. And there's a new opportunity to bring Europe forward. And of course, Philip Hammond and myself, we agreed from the first day that Brexit is a decision we have to accept by the British voters, but we will minimize the potential damage and maximize the mutual benefit.
Do you think that these young voters, do you think that Britain has the ability now to turn that around? Is there a possibility that Brexit doesn't even happen?
I think it would not be helpful if we start a speculation that would happen or not. British government has said, no, we will stay to the Brexit, we take the decisions, or we take it as a matter of fact. It's a matter of respect. But if they would wanted to change their decision, of course, they would find open doors. But I think it's not very likely.
What about if they want more time to negotiate? Barnier has said the EU is ready, but obviously the UK needs to sort some things out before they really come to the table. It's already been 3 months since Article 50, and they still haven't started. Can they have some more time?
I think the negotiations will now start, and I think they have agreed before the British election that in the first round they will negotiate the principles of the Brexit, and as soon as this is done, then we can do what will be in parallel, what will be the details of the regulation and what will be the further relations between UK after Brexit and the single market and European Union and so on. And therefore, let's start the negotiation. And at the end, we will always come to reasonable decisions. But it's too early to have such a discussion.
Can we think already now, since Macron has won the election in France and Germany and France seem to be working more closely together, about the possibility of real EU reforms? I mean, you've been a big proponent of a stronger, deeper union.
I am always in favor, and I think we have a good opportunity now to get more dynamic in the European development. I discussed just some days ago with Jean-Claude Juncker, who is a good friend of mine since decades, and I said, look, we are ready to make any reform, but only in line with the primary law. And as soon as we get amendments to the primary law, that is the Lisbon Treaty, we can do more. As long as we are bound to stick to the given primary law, we have to make some more dynamic in integration in a pragmatic intergovernmental way. And he said, yes, of course, I know the Lisbon Treaty, but if we agree that as soon as possible we would move such an enhanced cooperation, pragmatic intergovernmental cooperation, whatever, in common European law, as soon as we get amendments to the treaty, it's better, then it's okay, and we will work in this direction. I think it's pragmatic to move in the direction to get more efficiency for Europe, and in this way to convince the people in the European member states that Europe matters and Europe is the right solution for the future.
Don't you have to move in the direction of shared debt responsibility, European bonds. Your Spanish counterpart was recently saying it has to happen that way. Pierre Moscovici has said recently it's got to happen that way. It seems to be the only way if you really want a deeper, closer Europe.
If you listen, if you have seen the interview which has given the former governor of the Bank of England, Marvin King, which I very much respect, he makes things a little bit more difficult. But my answer has always been and remains, we can only share, we can only risk sharing if we have the instruments to implement these common decisions. If you have common risk without common decisions, it is the wrong construction, and you will end in an economic disaster.
You have to, in some way, share the risk, even where we are now, right? I mean, you can't, for example, afford to let Italian banks fail, thus hurting the common currency.
But I can only share risk if I have the instrument to implement the decisions. If you separate so risk taking from the decision competence, you get bad results. This is an old economic lesson you must never forget.